He told my 12-year-old daughter she was too fat to fly. 85 pounds of pure muscle and determination, and he called her fat. When I confronted him about destroying my child's self-esteem, he laughed in my face and told me to stay in my lane. But what Coach Brendan didn't know was that I was already building a case that would end his career forever. And by the time I was done, he would never scream at another little girl again. Before we dive into the story, I have a quick favor to ask. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist in our revenge stories. We drop new videos every single day. Now, let's get back to the story. My name is Irene. I'm a 38 years old single mother. And this is the story of how we took down the most feared gymnastics coach in our state. Leela started gymnastics when she was 5 years old. Not because I pushed her into it, but because she couldn't stop moving. This kid would cartwheel down grocery store aisles, balance on curbs like they were Olympic beams, and spend hours watching gymnastics videos on YouTube, mimicking every move she saw. By the time she was 8, her recreational coach pulled me aside after practice. Irene, Leela has real talent. Have you considered competitive gymnastics? I'll be honest, competitive gymnastics terrified me. I'd heard the stories about coaches who screamed, parents who spent their life savings, kids who burned out before they hit puberty. But when I looked at Leela's face, glowing with pure joy as she stuck a perfect landing, I knew I couldn't take this away from her. So we took the leap. I enrolled her in the competitive program at our local gym, Meadowbrook Athletics. The transition was immediate and intense. Practice went from 2 hours twice a week to 3 hours, 4 days a week. Leela had to learn an entirely new vocabulary of skills: back handsprings, front tucks, kip-ups on bars. The first few months were brutal. She'd come home with ripped hands from the uneven bars, sore muscles from conditioning, and homework piling up because practice didn't end until 7 p.m. Some nights I'd find her crying in the bathtub, ice packs on her shoulders, wondering if we'd made a mistake. But then she'd nail a skill she'd been working on for weeks, and that brilliant smile would return. Her coach, Mrs. Wilson, was firm but encouraging. She pushed Leela to her limits but always celebrated the victories, no matter how small. "Mom, watch this," Leela would call out during open gym, attempting skills that seemed impossible just months before. The determination in her eyes was fierce and beautiful. After 13 months of training, Mrs. Wilson approached me again. "She's ready for her first competition." We started small. Local meets with names like Spring Fling Classic and Autumn Invitational. Leela thrived in the competitive environment. She wasn't the most naturally gifted athlete. Some girls seemed to float through routines effortlessly, while Leela had to fight for every skill. But what she lacked in raw talent, she made up for in heart. She'd stay after practice to work on troublesome elements, wake up early to stretch, and never complained about the grueling schedule. By age 10, she was winning medals at local-level competitions. That's when we first heard about Coach Brendan Morrison. Brendan ran the most prestigious gymnastics program in our area, Elite Edge Gymnastics. His athletes regularly made it to nationals, and he'd coached 3 Olympic alternates. But he was selective, very selective. He only took athletes he believed had championship potential. When Leela was 11, Brendan watched her compete at states. She just nailed her floor routine, a routine she'd been perfecting for months, when I noticed him taking notes in the stands. After her event, he approached us. "Your daughter has potential," he said, his voice carrying an authority that made other parents turn their heads. "But she's going to need serious coaching if she wants to compete at the elite level." He handed me his card. "Think about it, but don't wait too long. I'm very particular about who I work with." For weeks, Leela begged me to let her train with Coach Brendan. She'd research his athletes online, watching their routines over and over. "Mom, please, this could be my chance. What if I could make it to the Olympics?" Against my better judgment, I scheduled a meeting. Elite Edge Gymnastics was intimidating from the moment we walked in. The facility was pristine, with motivational posters covering every wall. "Pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever. Champions are made when nobody's watching. If it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you." Brendan was in his early 40s, tall and lean, with the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. He had short-cropped brown hair, sharp blue eyes, and spoke with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything. "Leela," he said during our meeting, "I've watched your routines. You have natural ability, but you're training like a recreational gymnast. If you want to compete at the elite level, everything changes. Your diet, your schedule, your mindset. Are you ready for that?" Leela nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. I'll do whatever it takes." "Good, because in my program, we don't accept excuses, we don't accept mediocrity, and we definitely don't accept quitters." The contract was expensive, more than we could comfortably afford. But seeing the irony in Leela's eyes, I signed it anyway. The first few months seemed fine. Leela was training 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. She was learning advanced skills I'd never seen her attempt before. Her strength and flexibility improved dramatically. But slowly, I started noticing changes in my daughter. The girl who used to chatter excitedly about practice became quiet on car rides home. She'd pick at her dinner instead of devouring it like she used to. When I asked about practice, she'd give short answers. "It was fine, Mom, just tired." I chalked it up to the increased training intensity. Elite-level gymnastics was demanding. Of course she was tired. Then the comments started. "Coach Brendan says I need to watch my weight if I want to stick my landings," she mentioned casually one evening. "He's probably just trying to help you optimize your performance," I replied, though something felt off. A few weeks later, "Coach says maybe I should skip the post-practice snack. He thinks it might help with my tumbling." Then, "He wants me to drink water instead of sports drinks, says they have too much sugar." Each comment seemed reasonable in isolation, but together, they were forming a pattern that made my stomach turn. The weigh-ins started 4 months into training. Brendan announced that all athletes would be weighed weekly to monitor their conditioning. But these weren't private weigh-ins. Girls had to step on the scale in front of the entire team. Leela came home devastated after the first one. "Coach announced everyone's weight in front of everyone," she sobbed. "Some of the older girls laughed because I'm the heaviest in my age group." "Sweetheart, you're also the tallest in your age group. And you're solid muscle. Weight means nothing. But Coach says it does. He says gymnasts need to be light to fly." I called the gym the next day to discuss the weigh-ins. The receptionist put me through to Brendan. "Mrs. Nelson, I understand you have concerns about our conditioning protocols," he said, his tone professional but condescending. "I'm concerned about public weigh-ins. My daughter is 12 years old, and she's training to be an elite athlete. If she can't handle feedback about her conditioning, she's not cut out for this level." Feedback is one thing. Public humiliation is another. "Mrs. Nelson, I've been coaching for 15 years. I've sent athletes to the Olympics. I think I know what works. If you're not comfortable with our methods, perhaps this isn't the right program for Leela." The threat was clear. Comply or leave. I stupidly chose to comply. The meal plans came next. Brendan distributed nutrition guidelines that were essentially starvation diets disguised as athletic performance plans. Breakfast, half a banana and water. Lunch, salad with lemon juice, no dressing. Dinner, 4 ounces of lean protein and vegetables, for growing 12-year-old athletes training 4 hours a day. Leela began obsessing over every bite of food. She'd ask me to measure her portions, count calories out loud, and panic if she ate anything not on the approved list. I found laxatives in her gym bag. When I confronted her, she broke down crying. Some of the older girls use them. They said it helps them stay light for competitions. That night, I called Brendan again. "Coach Morrison, we need to talk about the nutrition guidelines. I think they're too restrictive for young athletes." "Mrs. Nelson, are you a nutritionist?" "No, but I'm a mother, and my daughter is developing unhealthy eating habits." "Your daughter is developing the discipline required for elite athletics. If you want her to compete with recreational-level expectations, there are plenty of other gyms in town." Again, the threat. Again, I backed down. I should have pulled her out then. I should have trusted my instincts. But Leela begged me not to. She was so close to qualifying for regionals, she said. Just a few more months. Those few more months nearly destroyed my daughter. The verbal abuse started subtly, disguised as coaching feedback. But by month 7, Brendan had dropped all pretense. I began hearing fragments of his coaching when I arrived early for pickup. Sharp, cutting comments that echoed through the gym. "Emma, you're moving like you're underwater. Are you even trying?" Jessica, that routine was sloppy. Do it again, and again, until you stop embarrassing yourself. Maya, you're dragging the whole team down with that attitude. But it was the comments about their bodies that made my blood boil. Joy, you're looking soft around the middle. When's the last time you looked in a mirror? Katie, those thighs are getting thick. Maybe spend less time at the snack bar. Rebecca, you're bouncing when you land because you're carrying extra weight. Fix it, these were children. 10, 11, 12 years old. And he was systematically destroying their self-esteem in the name of motivation. I started watching other parents' faces during pickup. The forced smiles, the worried glances, the way they hurried their daughters out without making eye contact with Brendan. Everyone knew something was wrong, but nobody wanted to be the first to speak up. The culture of fear was so pervasive that even the parents were intimidated. Leela began having panic attacks before practice. She'd sit in the car, hyperventilating, begging me to let her skip just one day. "He's going to weigh us today," she'd sob. "I had a piece of birthday cake at school yesterday. He's going to notice." I'd hold my 12-year-old daughter as she cried about eating a single piece of cake. Her performance started suffering. The more Brendan criticized her, the more mistakes she made. The more mistakes she made, the angrier he became. It was a vicious cycle that was destroying her love for the sport she'd once lived for. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was running late for pickup and rushed into the gym just as practice was ending. The girls were lined up against the wall while Brendan addressed them. I hung back, not wanting to interrupt. "Ladies, regionals are in 6 weeks," he announced. "I'm looking at this lineup, and I see some of you who clearly aren't ready." He began pacing in front of them like a drill sergeant. "Leela," he said suddenly, stopping directly in front of my daughter. "Step forward." My heart sank as I watched her move out of line, her face already flushed with embarrassment. "Tell the team why you might not be competing at regionals this year." Leela's voice was barely a whisper. Because I'm not ready." Louder, so everyone can hear. "Because I'm not ready," she repeated, tears starting to form. "And why aren't you ready, Leela?" She looked confused, terrified. I don't know." "You don't know." His voice dripped with fake surprise. "Well, let me help you figure it out. You're not ready because you're too fat to fly. You're too soft to stick your landings. And you're too weak mentally to handle the pressure of competition." The entire team stood in shocked silence as my daughter's face crumpled. "Maybe if you spent less time eating and more time conditioning, you'd be worth the investment I've made in you. But right now, you're a disappointment." Leela was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking with each breath. Everyone else dismissed. "Leela, you stay. We're going to have a conversation about commitment." I couldn't move. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching my daughter fall apart while this monster continued his assault on her self-worth. That night, Leela barely spoke during dinner. She pushed food around her plate but didn't eat a single bite. When I tried to talk to her about what happened, she just shook her head. "He's right, Mom. I am too fat. I need to try harder." I found her in the bathroom at 2 a.m., trying to make herself throw up. The next morning, I found search history on her tablet. How to throw up quietly. How to lose weight fast. Am I too fat for gymnastics? My 12-year-old was Googling eating disorder tips because her coach had convinced her she was worthless. That's when I snapped, but I didn't storm into the gym screaming. I didn't confront Brendan in front of other parents. I did something much more calculated. I began building a case. First, I bought a small digital recorder, the kind used for business meetings. It was tiny enough to hide in the bottom of Leela's water bottle. "Sweetheart," I told her, "I need you to do something for me. I need you to keep this recorder running during practice. Can you do that?" She looked confused. "Why?" "Because Mommy needs to hear exactly what Coach Brendan is saying to you girls." "Are you going to get me in trouble?" "No, baby, you're not in any trouble, but Coach Brendan might be." Over the next 2 weeks, I collected hours of audio recordings. What I heard made me physically sick. Not just the comments about weight and appearance, though those were constant and devastating, but the systematic psychological abuse he inflicted on these children. "You're pathetic, Emma. My 5-year-old niece has better form than you. Stop crying, Jessica. Champions don't cry, unless you're planning to quit like a baby. Maya, you're embarrassing yourself in this gym. Maybe your parents wasted their money on someone with no talent. Katie, you look like a pig when you tumble. Fix your form or find a new sport." The worst part was hearing how the girls responded. These confident, strong athletes had been reduced to apologetic, fearful shadows of themselves. "I'm sorry, coach. I'll do better, coach. Please don't kick me off the team, coach." Children begging for approval from their abuser. I transcribed every recording, noting the date, time, and context. I researched safe sport policies, gymnastics association guidelines, and child protection laws. Then I started quietly reaching out to other parents. My first conversation was with Emma's mother, Megan. I approached her carefully after practice one day. "Megan, can I ask you something? Has Emma mentioned anything about feeling uncomfortable at practice?" Her face immediately changed. The forced smile disappeared, replaced by concern and recognition. "Why do you ask?" "Leela's been having some struggles with body image lately. Some things Coach Brendan has said." "Oh my God," she whispered. "Emma's been the same way. She's been asking me if she's fat, if she eats too much. Last week she asked me to buy her smaller clothes because she thinks she's too big." "Has she mentioned specific things Brendan has said?" Megan looked around nervously, making sure no one could overhear us. "He told her she moves like a cow, called her lazy in front of the whole team. Emma's been doing gymnastics for 6 years. She's never been lazy a day in her life." We talked for 20 minutes in her car. By the end of the conversation, we were both crying. I had similar conversations with 4 other parents over the next week. Every single one had noticed changes in their daughters. Every single one had concerns about Brendan's methods. But every single one was afraid to speak up. "He has so much power in the gymnastics community," one mother explained. "If we complain, he could blacklist our daughters from other programs." "What if we're overreacting?" another worried. "What if this is just how elite-level coaching works?" The culture of fear extended far beyond the gym walls. But I had something they didn't: hours of recorded evidence of systematic child abuse. 2 weeks after I started recording, Leela came home from practice more devastated than I'd ever seen her. "He announced that I'm officially off the regionals team," she sobbed. "In front of everyone. He said I'm a quitter and a disappointment, and that I don't deserve to wear the team uniform." "What exactly did he say, sweetheart?" "He said." She could barely get the words out between sobs. "He said I'm too fat to represent elite edge, and that my parents wasted their money on someone with no potential." That night, after Leela cried herself to sleep, I made a decision. Coach Brendan Morrison was about to learn that he'd picked the wrong mother to mess with. I spent the entire weekend preparing my case. I selected the most damning audio clips, the ones where Brendan's abuse was clearest and most undeniable. I wrote a detailed summary of each incident, including dates, witnesses, and the impact on the children involved. But I knew that presenting evidence wouldn't be enough. I needed to ensure maximum exposure and accountability. Monday morning, I compiled everything into a comprehensive folder: audio files, transcriptions, witness accounts from parents, and documentation of the physical and psychological harm these children were experiencing. Then I sent it to everyone who needed to see it. My first email went to every parent in the Elite Edge program. The subject line was simple: "This is who's coaching your daughters." The message was equally direct: "Dear parents, over the past several weeks, I've been documenting the verbal and psychological abuse taking place at Elite Edge Gymnastics." The attached audio recordings were captured during regular practice sessions. Please listen to them and decide for yourself whether this is the environment you want for your children. Our daughters deserve better. Irene Nelson, I sent copies to. The Regional Gymnastics Association, USA Gymnastics Safe Sport Department. The State Athletic Commission, our local newspaper's sports desk, the gym's corporate office, 3 other gymnastics facilities in town by Tuesday morning. My phone was ringing nonstop. The first call came from Emma's mother, Megan. "Irene, I listened to the recordings. I'm pulling Emma out today. This is horrific." The second call was from the Regional Gymnastics Association. "Mrs. Nelson, we've received your complaint and evidence. We're launching an immediate investigation." The third call was from Brendan himself. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he screamed into the phone. "You've violated privacy laws. You've defamed me. I'm calling my lawyer." "Coach Morrison," I said calmly, "everything I recorded happened in a business establishment during youth athletic training. There's no expectation of privacy when you're abusing children in a gym full of people." "I never abused anyone." I'm a championship-level coach. These girls need to be pushed. You called my 12-year-old daughter too fat to fly. You told her she was a disappointment. You systematically destroyed her self-esteem and the self-esteem of every girl in that program. That's not abuse, that's coaching. No, Brendan. That's child abuse, and now everyone knows it. I hung up. By Wednesday, the story had taken on a life of its own. Parents were sharing the audio clips on social media. The local newspaper published a front-page story titled "Toxic Coaching Culture in Youth Gymnastics." The regional association announced they were suspending Brendan pending a full investigation. But the real explosion came Thursday morning. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The story had gone viral. A parent from our program had shared the newspaper article on a gymnastics forum. From there, it spread to parenting groups, abuse survivor networks, and sports reform advocates across the country. By Thursday afternoon, Elite Edge Gymnastics had lost 12 families. By Friday, that number had grown to 28. The regional association's investigation concluded within a month. The audio evidence was too clear to dispute. Brendan Morrison was permanently banned from coaching youth athletics in our state. But that was just the beginning. Safe Sport launched their own investigation, which expanded to include Brendan's entire coaching history. They discovered a pattern of psychological abuse spanning 15 years and multiple gyms. 3 former athletes, now adults, came forward with their own stories of abuse under Brendan's coaching. Their testimonies painted a picture of systematic psychological manipulation that had affected their relationships, careers, and mental health long after they stopped competing. The corporate office that owned Elite Edge Gymnastics terminated Brendan's contract and implemented new policies requiring all coaches to undergo psychological evaluation and abuse prevention training. A class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of current and former athletes who had suffered under Brendan's coaching. But the most satisfying moment came 5 months after I sent those first emails. I was dropping Leela off at her new gym, a positive, supportive environment where coaches celebrated effort over perfection, when my phone rang. It was a reporter from a national sports magazine. "Mrs. Nelson, we're writing a feature story about abuse in youth sports, and your case has become a catalyst for reform discussions at the national level. USA Gymnastics is implementing new psychological safety protocols directly because of what you exposed." After I hung up, Leela looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in months. "Hope, Mom, did you really take down Coach Brendan all by yourself?" "No, sweetheart, we took him down together. You were brave enough to keep that recorder running even when you were scared. That took incredible courage. But why did you do all that? It must have been scary." I knelt down so we were eye to eye. "Because nobody gets to hurt my daughter and walk away. Nobody gets to tell you you're not good enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough. You are perfect exactly as you are, and any adult who tries to convince you otherwise is wrong." She hugged me tighter than she had in months. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, kiddo. Now go show them what a real gymnast looks like." 6 months later, the transformation in Leela was remarkable. She was training at Stellar Gymnastics with Coach Amanda, a former Olympic alternate who believed in building athletes up rather than tearing them down. Leela had gained back the weight she'd lost during her time with Brendan, healthy weight that made her stronger and more confident. More importantly, she was smiling again. The girl who used to have panic attacks before practice now looked forward to training. She was learning new skills, competing at her own pace, and remembering why she fell in love with gymnastics in the first place. The eating disorder behaviors stopped within the first month at the new gym. She ate dinner without anxiety, enjoyed birthday cake without guilt, and never asked me to measure her portions. As for Coach Brendan Morrison, his career was over. The Safe Sport investigation resulted in a lifetime ban from all USA Gymnastics programs. The class action lawsuit was settled out of court, with each affected family receiving compensation for therapy costs and damages. The settlement agreement included non-disclosure clauses, but I can say the amount was significant enough to cover years of counseling for these children. Elite Edge Gymnastics was sold to new ownership and completely rebranded. They hired all new coaching staff and implemented strict policies against weight shaming, public weigh-ins, and restrictive eating protocols. Brendan Morrison thought he was untouchable. He thought parents were just obstacles to managing, people to intimidate into compliance, while he pursued championship glory at the expense of children's well-being. He thought wrong. The last I heard, he was working at a sporting goods store in another state, banned from coaching and struggling to rebuild his life. Some people might feel sorry for him. I'm not one of them. There are consequences for hurting children. There are consequences for abusing the trust parents place in you. And there are consequences for underestimating a mother's love for her child. Today, Leela is 15. She made her high school varsity gymnastics team as a freshman. She's confident, strong, and healthy. She still dreams of competing in college, but now those dreams are built on joy rather than fear. She often talks about wanting to become a coach herself someday, the kind of coach who builds athletes up instead of tearing them down. I want to be like Coach Amanda, she told me recently. I want to help kids love gymnastics the way it should be loved. That's when I know we won. Not because we destroyed Brendan Morrison's career, but because we saved my daughter's spirit. And in the end, that's all that really matters. If you're a parent reading this, and something feels wrong about your child's coaching situation, trust your instincts. Your child's mental health is more important than any trophy, any scholarship, any dream. Be willing to fight. Be willing to make waves. Be willing to be called overprotective or difficult. Because sometimes, being a good parent means being willing to become your child's fiercest protector, even if it makes you some enemies along the way. Coach Brendan Morrison learned that lesson the hard way. He told my daughter she was too fat to fly. Now he can't coach anywhere. And I sleep very well at night knowing that no other little girl will ever have to hear those words from him again. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way.